welcome back to the 5-Minute Tele-Physio Talks. I'm Dr. Mike here with Dr. Tim, and we are pretty excited. We're interviewing Joey Papa Phillips today. Just to give you a quick rundown on the list, we could go on and on, but he is the founder of the Phillips Flyers, a very popular run group in our area, now boasting somewhere close to 600 members. He is a 20-time Boston Marathon qualifier. He's actually on the board for medal distribution at the end of the race for the Boston Marathon. And if you've driven by his driveway, you'll notice there's a painted line of the Boston Marathon finish line rolling up into his driveway. Last thing we'll kind of brag on is the city of Cuyahoga Falls actually announced his 60th birthday as a citywide holiday, thanks to his contributions for fitness and wellness. So the list could go on, but I'll just keep him right there, and I'll pass it over to Tim as he jumps into the interview.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. And this interview is cool for me and special to me because even in the history of the clinic, Joey, you've been here with us through it all. And I've known you for about 8 years, and you knew me before I was married, before I had kids, when I was just a younger person, you're younger than now, at the University of Akron, you know, and my wife Jenny as well. And what's kind of cool is I know your story, and you were introduced to me as the Marathon Man, but in a unique sense, that has not always been your nickname. And we kind of wanted to share with the rest of the world your story and how inspirational it kind of has been. Tell us your other nickname prior to being the Marathon Man.
Well, in high school and when I was growing up, I was always pretty athletic, and I always thought that I was somewhat of an athlete. But as age caught up to me, something happened. And I guess from age 30 to 33, I gained weight, and I didn't really realize I did. And my nickname was Chubby Joe. And I thought it was, just a nickname or a joke or whatever, because we had a couple Joes. Well, I was the Chubby Joe. And I didn't realize that until I went water skiing at my brother's place in California. I got back, there was some pictures. Back then you had to develop them and get them. And when I got the pictures, I looked at myself basically for the first time and realized that I was pretty overweight, and it was a pretty stunning thing to see. And 2 weeks after I saw that picture, I was at the university working on some wall covering in the university club, and ladder kicked out, and I fell about 10 feet and absolutely obliterated my right knee. So now I was Chubby Joe, stagnant with a absolutely destroyed leg.
And what did that surgery look like? How long was the recovery? Because at this point you were not an athlete. You were Chubby Joe with one knee at this point. What did that recovery look like?
It was amazing. Paul Ryman was my doctor, and he's in California now. But he put it together the best he could. He said it was one of the most destroyed knees he's ever had to repair. I tore my ACL, MCL, stretched basically every muscle around it. When I landed, my knee was one way and my foot was out to the right. It was really weird to see. So he put that together the best he could, but the worst thing he said was he couldn't repair the medial meniscus. He had to remove all of it. So I was bone on bone on my medial side. And that was 29 years ago. Well, he put me on a rigorous training program, kind of like what you guys do back in the day, 30 years ago. So 8 months of rigorous training. I lost the weight. I got fit. Probably the first time in my life I got real fit. And I started to recover. Every month he was amazed at my recovery level. Well, when I was in recovery, he said that I probably wouldn't run anymore, and his goal was to get me to walk without a limp. So that's how much the damage was in that knee. But after 7 months, I started feeling pretty good, and a lot of my friends at the Falls Natatorium were runners, and they were kind of pushing me a little bit. And I asked the doc if I could run, and he gave me the okay. He says, the good pain and bad pain, and I started trotting probably 6 months after post-op.
That's crazy. And then just out of curiosity, between, I guess, the beginning of running, the surgery and everything, when did you start identifying yourself as a runner? Like, when did you run your first marathon?
I started to run for the first time ever. I ran a 5K and I ran a 10K. Back then it was called the Cleveland Revco. And a lot of my friends were running the marathon, who I had trained with. I can say that in a biblical sense. They were serious trainers, and I was just trying to be healthy. And so when I finished my 10K, I waited at the finish line for them to finish their marathon. And I was so inspired by them. It was amazing to see all the work they did and to see them come through. I knew the effort was so huge. And I kind of looked up with a tear in my eye, and I kind of said, hey, I wonder if I can run a marathon. And I called my doctor the next day, and he asked how the 10K went. I said it was magnificent. I said the pain is tolerable, and I have a question. And before I even asked the question, he goes, "You want to run a marathon?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, no limitations." So I trained for my first marathon. That had to be like 93. Was my first marathon. That was actually the Columbus Marathon, and I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah, that's truly a crazy and amazing story. Here we are in 2020 with 45 total under your belt.
48.
Like 48 under your belt. 20 being at Boston. What is your most memorable Boston Marathon? And it could be for any reason. I know you've been through a lot of them. What's one that sticks out in your memory and why?
There's three. There's three that are important for different reasons, of course. And of course, the first one, and that was the Erie Marathon, and it was an inspirational day. It would have been my dad's birthday. It was in Pennsylvania, where my dad was born, and I remember that last mile. I knew I pretty much had it if I didn't, fall, which I was prone to do. And I looked up while I was doing that last mile, and I had a tear in my eye, and I said, "Dad, me and you together. This is it. We're going to do this together." And I finished a minute 23 ahead of my qualifying time, which was unbelievable. And then we fast forward to actually running my Bostons. So you asked me what my favorite Bostons are. The first one, because I barely qualified, and I wasn't a pedigree runner, and I never will be. I call myself a grunt. So the first one was so inspirational because I thought it was the only one. There's two others that are very important to me, and of course, it was 2013, which was 7 years ago, a couple of days ago, the bombing year. And I was, that's another story in itself as far as that day is concerned. At the finish line, I just received my medals when the first bomb hit, and I knew instantly. I knew it was a bomb. It rattled my teeth, and I turned around and saw a flash and saw the second bomb go off, and it was quite a surreal experience. That one is pretty etched in my memory as far as, of course, and of course the 20th. That whole day was a crazy day, but to be there for my 20th on an event that was now etched. I'm known as Boston Joey to a bunch, which is kind of crazy to even think about when you look at the history of my story. That one is. I remember when I put that in my hand, I said, "Take that away." I'll always be a 20-time Boston marathoner.
Man, and it's crazy. You throw the word out there like 20 Bostons, and it automatically sounds special, But then you take it a step further, and you hear the story, and it's in the details for sure, and all the people you've affected along the way, and all the miles. You gave a number. What was the total number of Boston miles?
524 Boston Marathon miles.
Right, just race day miles, But you got to think of every single mile, how much training went into all of that, how many people went into all that, how many relationships were built on all that. And we definitely consider ourselves, blessed to be part of that relationship flow that you have. If you don't mind, I'm sure our listeners will be interested. Why don't you give a little bit of the the history of me and you, because we've known each other as your practitioner and then also as
Oh,
your friend
yeah,
for a while now. If you don't mind, just give a little bit of that history as we wrap up here.
absolutely. Um, I worked at the University of Akron for 32 years, and I had a lot of connections there. So when I retired, the rec center at the university was fantastic. So I started to be a staple there. But I saw you and a couple other dear friends, and I saw your work ethic, and so detailed in your efforts to become a professional. And it was quite special to see you back then. And it just kept growing on to what, 8 years later.
Yeah.
Here we are. And I've had issues along the way, and I've come to you for some advice and some assistance. And you have been, folks. If you have an issue, if there's ever a problem with anything, as far as your physical concerns are, go see you guys, you and Mike, and it's quite amazing to see someone treat the cause and not the effect. And I think that's the thing that's stands out about you, and figure out what's going on. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for that, Joey. And thank you so much for this interview. I am going to take a second here to transition this back over to Dr. Mike, who will close us out.
Very good. Very good. But
Right.
not a bad transition to go from chubby Joey to Boston Joey. That's a good move. Definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I will echo what Tim's saying, Joe. It has been a pleasure to get to see you in the clinic, see you out on the streets, get to run with you. And as we've mentioned several times before, we can extend that offer to the other runners. We know things are a little tricky right now with the COVID-19 going on, but we are doing telehealth services where we can either work someone through an injury to get them back to where they need to be, or maybe you're just looking to progress exercise as your direction's a little bit foggy right now. Both of those great options, and we'll do discount PAPA, capital PA, and that'll be a $10 off of that telehealth visit, whether it be for exercise continuation or working on an injury. So Joe, thanks so much for showing up for our interview today. We really appreciate it.